A year ago, my girlfriend and I moved out of our Los Angeles apartment to travel the world. We actually bought a place down in Mexico, and we tried living in a bunch of different cities to figure out where we want to actually call our home base. And we decided to move back to Los Angeles. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of living in LA, why we decided to move back, and why I actually think that moving back is going to end up allowing me to double my income. And at the end of the video, I'll give you a quick tour of my new apartment that's right across from the beach here in Santa Monica. It's by far the nicest, but also the most expensive apartment I've ever lived in. And make sure to smash the like button because I'm going to be sharing with you the idea of inevitability thinking. This is by far the most important principle I've used to have success in life. Whatever financial success I've had so far is because of this idea, and I'll be talking in depth about this and how it relates to me deciding to come back to Santa Monica. And where you live is a huge decision. You're going to set yourself up for success. You're going to, if you do it properly, make it inevitable that you end up having success. Now, Ariana and I moved away from Los Angeles, moved out of our Santa Monica apartment last year because of a number of different issues. The cost of living in LA is extremely high. The homeless problem has gotten really, really bad. In fact, we had a run-in with a homeless person that almost attacked us. They were yelling at us, and I thought this person was about to get in a fight with me. I was ready to get in a fight with this person until I realized, oh, this person is actually legitimately insane. And I realized that, it's a very sad situation. So I got some distance. But there's also things that people like to complain about, like the traffic, or another big problem with living in California in general is the income tax. It's a 10% to 13% income tax depending on what your tax bracket is. And for me, that's a lot of money. In fact, the amount of money that I could save by moving to a place like Texas is enough money for me to be able to pay for a house, to be able to pay a mortgage. And Ariana and I actually went to Austin, Texas to see if that's a place that we want to live. And after spending a couple weeks there, it's a really amazing city. There's a lot of cool things about it. But at the end of the day, Los Angeles is our home. Los Angeles is where we love to be. And let's talk about the pros and the cons of Los Angeles really quick, because recently it's become very trendy to talk crap about California, to talk crap about Los Angeles, and for good reasons. Like LA has a lot of problems. First off, as I already mentioned, the homelessness problem. And I'm not the victim here. It's very sad what's going on with the homeless population. It's something that needs to be fixed, but it's a complicated thing. I don't claim to have the situation. I just know that it's not always safe. Sometimes you're walking around and you're seeing a person ranting, and that's obviously clinically insane and sometimes dangerous. And it's a little bit scary, and that's a reason why I think a lot of people are moving. Also, the high cost of living. I have a joke with my parents. Anytime they come to visit me, I always tell my dad, make sure to eat beforehand, because in Santa Monica, everything is a lot more expensive. I mean, my parents live in the suburbs of LA. That's where I grew up. And even just driving 45 minutes down, the cost in the actual city are a lot higher and the portions of food are a lot smaller. He always jokes that when he comes out to dinner here, he ends up paying double the price and leaves afterwards and he's still hungry. And there is a lot of other issues, but most of the other issues don't really affect me that much. For instance, a lot of people complain about the traffic in LA, but I actually work from home. I'm able to work wherever I want to work. And in this new apartment, I got a 2-bedroom apartment, so I actually created a complete YouTube studio in the 2nd bedroom. So I don't really need to drive that often. Now it does suck if you end up meeting someone that lives on the other side of LA, because you're never going to see that person. They may only be a few miles away, but it ends up being an hour drive in traffic. So you end up seeing friends that you have on the other side of LA, maybe like once a year. But there's also a lot of pros to living in Los Angeles that a lot of people forgot about, that I even kind of forgot about. First off, right now, I'm very lucky. I'm looking at an amazing ocean view from my apartment window. And for me, when I get stressed out, when I'm anxious, when I'm not in a good mood, if I go out to the beach, if I jump in the ocean or just lay on the sand, it completely erases a lot of my negative self-talk. It completely grounds me and just makes me happy, to be honest. And there's a lot of nature in other cities, but there's something different about the beach. There's something freeing about the beach. One thing that I noticed being here that I didn't really see as much in other cities when we were traveling around, trying out different things, is you can be weird. You can do whatever you want to do, and people don't really judge you as much. Even in Austin, whose motto is keep Austin weird, I didn't have that same sense of freedom to just do whatever you want to do. And one of the things that I like to do is when I'm feeling down, I'll go to the beach, I'll go stretch, I'll go hang out on the beach. And there's just this sense of open space. You can look out to the ocean, and for as far as the eye can see, you can just see the water, and there's something extremely calming about that. But then if you turn around, there's lots of fun things to do. The other thing about Los Angeles that a lot of people forget about is it's only a couple hours if you want to go to Joshua Tree, which is an amazing desert, or it's only a couple hours so you can go to the mountains or go to the Sequoia National Park, or you can go on a hike. And another pro with Los Angeles is, yes, it is expensive, as I talked about, but the flip side of that is the people that can afford to live here are generally doing something really interesting. I've found some of my best friends and a lot of really successful entrepreneurs here in Los Angeles, because if you can afford to pay these high rents and you don't mind paying a little bit more for everything, those people tend to have more of an abundance mentality. Versus when I went to Puerto Rico, a lot of the people there are extremely nice, very amazing entrepreneurs, but it's just a different mindset. They're there in Puerto Rico because they're trying to save money. They don't want to pay money in tax, and so they're willing to compromise their lifestyle to save some money. Where the people that are living in Los Angeles, they don't care about saving money. They want to have what they consider to be the best life possible. Now, I get that some people that are living in Puerto Rico or that are living in Austin, they really love it there, and it's not about saving money for them. What I found for me is this is the place that I really want to be. And I'll talk about the law of inevitability thinking really quickly, but here's one of the most important points of this entire video. What is the point of making money? The point of making money for me is to be able to have freedom, is to be able to do whatever I want to do, even if it doesn't financially make sense. And financially, as I mentioned, it makes way more sense for me to move to Austin, Texas, where I'd be paying 10% less money in state income. I'd be paying no state income tax. Or even more financially, it makes sense for me to move to Puerto Rico. But then I would be compromising my lifestyle. I'd be compromising what I want to do for money. But the whole point of making money is to have freedom to be able to do what you want. But there's this weird thing that happens when you start making a lot of money. You start doing things and changing your behavior to save money. But it's somewhat paradoxical. And I see a lot of people get caught in this trap where as they make more money, they actually have to shrink. They're actually forced into a prison of their own making. And I've seen a lot of my friends that moved to Texas, and when I ask them why, they're like, well, I'm going to save the money. I'm like, well, do you like it there? And some say yes. But a lot of people say no. And I was talking to a friend / mentor, and I was telling him, I could live in Austin, Texas. I could save all this money, or I could move back to LA. And he asked me why for each of them. And I told him financially it makes sense to come back to Austin. I'm going to save so much money. The math makes sense. It was very logical. But emotionally, I want to come back to LA because my friends and my family are there. And he looked at me and he said, well, isn't friends and family probably the most important thing in life? And a light bulb went off, and I realized, yeah, like that is important. And my sister had a girl a few years ago. So I've got a niece here. All my family's here. I have a really good group of friends here. And I realized that if I moved to Austin or any other new city, I'd have to make a whole new group of friends. And anytime my friends or my family members were having a birthday or some kind of a celebration, I'd have to fly back. And that would have taken a toll on me because it's draining to have to get into an airplane and fly back and forth. Now, could I do it? Yes. But that's not what I wanted at the end of the day. And when I first quit my corporate job about 10 years ago, I spent years traveling all over the place. I lived in Colombia. I lived in Brazil. I lived in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I went and traveled around Asia. I did all this stuff and I had a lot of fun traveling. But there was this thing that I noticed. Every time I would move to a new city, it would take me a lot of time to get settled in. It would take me a long time to get in my routines. And I found that I wasn't productive. And for this last, little over a year, I've been repeating that. I've been moving around a lot, and I really haven't been that productive because every time I moved to a new city, I'd have to make new friends. I'd have to figure out what I'm going to do for fun. And honestly, as awesome as it was to be able to travel for this last year, and I made more money last year than I'd ever made in my life, but I didn't really feel satisfied because yes, I was living the 4-hour work week, which was a goal I had when I first quit my corporate job. I was making 10 times as much money as I was at my corporate job, only working a few hours a week, traveling the world. But I wasn't satisfied because I didn't really feel like I was doing anything with my life. I wasn't contributing to the world. And so that's part of the reason why I decided to come back to Los Angeles so I could be surrounded by friends, family. And this gets into the idea of inevitability thinking. And this is the most powerful tool you can use if you want to have success. And the idea is to make it inevitable that you're going to be successful at whatever you're trying to be successful at. I think about it as lining up all the dominoes so that when you flick the first one, the rest of them fall over. Let me give you an example. When I was first starting Performance Nut Butter, which is my first passion product business, it's the first business that I actually was able to make 6 figures a year passive income from. When I was first trying to start this, I didn't really want to start it. Like, it was scary. I was nervous about actually trying because what would happen if I failed? And I saw myself not really, like, I had this idea a year or two before I actually started it, and I wasn't working on it. And so what I ended up doing was I spent some money to create the initial samples, and I spent some more money to make a Kickstarter video. Spent probably about like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. And at that point, once I've already spent that money, I knew I was going to do whatever it took to make this successful. It was going to be inevitable that I was going to figure out how to make it successful because I don't like wasting money. I don't like losing money. So I put that money in, and then the rest is history. I figured it out. Same thing when I first moved to Santa Monica. When I first moved here, I was paying $1,700 a month for a 1-bedroom shack. It was not a nice place at all. And that amount of money was scary to me at the time, to spend that much money on rent. But I knew if I moved to Santa Monica that I'd be surrounded by successful people, and I'd figure out how to actually make it happen. And the same principle is true right now. I know that because I'm renting this 2-bedroom apartment and that I'm going to turn one of the bedrooms into a dedicated YouTube studio / office workspace, I know that it's going to be inevitable that I'm going to create more videos. And I know that if I create more videos, it's going to be inevitable that I'm going to have more success on YouTube. And I know that that will lead to me being able to help more people to create their own passive income business. And truthfully, there's a big part of me that just wants to be lazy. Look, really, I'm making enough money. I don't need to make more money. So the money doesn't really motivate me anymore. But there's a bigger part of me that doesn't feel satisfied, that doesn't feel like I'm contributing enough to the world. And that's why, even though I could be just living in Mexico right now and just spending all my time on the beach and collecting a decent paycheck while I'm doing that, that's why I decided instead to come here back to LA, where I have all my friends, I have all my family, I have a support network of people that are going to help me to recharge and rejuvenate and have fun. And at the same time, when I do want to work, this place is going to make it as easy as possible for me to do so. And so on paper, logically, it'd make it a lot more sense for me to move somewhere with lower rent and less income tax, and I would be saving money, right? But I know that we're not robots. And this is a huge realization I've had. We as humans are not robots. If we live in a shack and somewhere that we hate, we're not going to have as much fun. I find that when I'm happier, I'm doing things that I love, I have more energy, more dopamine, which leads to me having more creativity, which leads to me having more productivity. And so even though in the short run, I'm paying more money in rent, I'm paying more money in income taxes, and logically that doesn't make sense, emotionally, I know that I'm going to be setting myself up for success by being here, by being at a place that excites me, that I love. And in full transparency, I have some guilt about how much money I'm spending on this apartment. I feel like I don't deserve it. Even though I've worked extremely hard, even though I can easily afford this apartment, I still feel weird about spending this much money on a place. But I've personally found every time I upgrade my lifestyle, I upgrade my apartment, my income also increases more than the cost that I was spending on my apartment. And right now I have about 7 different sources of passive income that make me around $85,000 per month. So even though it is expensive to live in Los Angeles, I can afford it. And I did a video right here where I talk about all my different sources of passive income, how I created them, and how you can do it too. So you can click on that video to learn about how I created my passive income, and more importantly, I show you how you can create passive income as well, and how to do it in multiple different streams of income. So click on that video. I'll see you in the next video.